To the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Babak, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
It's a pleasure and honor being with you.
Let's jump straight into it. What got you into consulting and international business strategy, Babak?
Yeah. So one of the things is that I come from immigrant parents. We left Iran when the revolution happened in 1979, and my dad used to be a central banker back in the day. And we moved to Europe, we moved to Austria, we moved to Germany, we moved to all these different areas. And my dad ended up opening up a business, and unfortunately, it failed because he just did not understand the cultural nuances of doing business outside of Iran. So that kind of has always stuck with me in sense of I really yearn to help people, especially within the immigrant community, in overcoming the barriers to business and being able to adapt. And obviously, having the fact that I've traveled so much extensively, I've lived in five different continents throughout my life. I've had the pleasure of going to international school. My entire growing up was all international. So when I decided to kind of get into a job, it was how can I go ahead and use my background, my understanding of the world, both from a policy perspective and a business perspective, and merge us together to help businesses and adapt to new markets and be able to expand and grow in new markets.
So I guess this kind of answers the next question, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless, in case there are some nuances to that. What's the number one problem that you're solving right now? What is it that you're helping people achieve?
It's number one, understanding what markets to enter. So when people are deciding on a market globally, number one is deciding where do you go, how do you go there, what structures do you need, how much capital do you need to go into that market. It's a lot of the unknowns, and we have to think of it like a startup again, right? You may be very effective, very, very prosperous in your domestic market, and maybe even one or two other markets. But when you enter new markets somewhere else across the globe, you really have to be able to adapt. You have to go ahead and develop a sense of localness and localize your production as much as you can possibly can. So that is the bridge the gap that I try to solve for. It's how foreign is your product? How much viability of that product is in that new market? How many customers are there, realistically speaking? And what differentiators do you have versus the domestic brands? And those are the key answers that everybody's looking for to be able to be effective in that market.
It's so funny that you're mentioning this because I just moved into the US after doing business from the UK and south of France, but we've always worked with US people, so that's kind of a less big cultural shock. But it's very interesting, and I see how that could be mega relevant.
Right.
Do you have any specific targets, like people you work with, industry, company size, niche?
Yeah.
Like who do you work with, Babak?
So I've worked with a lot of SaaS companies in previous engagements. These are SaaS companies who are usually between 50 million to 150 million dollars in sales in the United States, and now they're trying to figure out what other markets globally they want to go to, and where they can be financially effective.
That makes sense. How do you find those? Like, what has worked for you to, get in front of? I'm gonna assume this is gonna be CEOs or founders or maybe go-to-markets, like head of units, right, within those companies, within those SaaS companies.
So yeah, many times it is also private equities, the investors. So I've worked with I've had the pleasure of working with the board. So many times the board brings me in. Sometimes the SaaS companies have here and there established relationships in the foreign market, but they haven't developed an international strategy at all. So they bring me in to really analyze the global market for them and see what the differentiating factor between Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia may be, why they should enter that market. If there are in that market, are there pricing competitiveness in the market? Can they defend the pricing that they have domestically, or can they or will it have to go discounted in those markets? So those are all the questions those are the initial conversations that we start having with the founders, with the private equities, with the venture capitals, with also the marketing departments. And many times the marketing department is given the expansion strategy for this. So those are the conversations we initially start having. And then it's almost like peeling an onion. You just go layer by layer, and you try to figure out where their uniqueness is and where they can be financially viable. And that's what we help them establish and do.
So, I mean, SaaS companies, 50 to 150 million, PE investors, boards, marketing departments. I see how you might need to peel the onion indeed and like
Yeah.
talk to the next stakeholder and the next decision maker and so on and so forth. What has worked for you to trigger those first conversations in the first place? Like marketing wise, what have you done to get in touch with those SaaS companies, PE investors, boards, marketing departments, and so on and so forth?
So number one, case studies. Many times I've created case studies of previous engagements, obviously taking out a lot of the secret data out of it, but establishing those, going to being my main source of business is warm referrals. Once you're in the industry, once people know you, once you've established yourself, it is a warm referrals that are actually open it up. The second element is just being at the right time, the right place, at the right time. I mean, luck has a lot to play with it as well. I think that many times as consultants, we don't actually measure luck as well, but luck has a lot to do with it. Being on an airplane with somebody and a conversation happens and that engages into a large, that initial conversation, leads to larger conversations. That happened to me with Airbus one time. I was flying back from Geneva, and the person sitting next to me was a venture capitalist, and they were doing some stuff, and they needed some help, and that 8-hour conversation was a very, very productive conversation for us. That's luck. You cannot, strategize for
I was
that.
going to be like, how do you scale talking to
Exactly,
your, neighbor in
exactly,
seats in a flight to sign some PE
exactly,
deals? But fair enough.
exactly.
Hey, this is
The only
also
thing you
what
can do
business
is
is.
the only thing you can do is fly a lot.
Exactly.
and
So I
then,
was like,
and then
which
yeah,
company, which
exactly,
seats, was it business?
exactly,
Like, how can consultants
exactly,
replicate this?
exactly. And then
Um,
the other thing as well is just being at events and conferences, and where decision makers are there, and being able to engage in those conversations, engage in the dialogue, and and answer questions. Many times I get a marketing person who just emails me with a question and says, "I'm stuck over here. Can you help me?" And then so having those preliminary conversations may lead to something larger. But my job, I always see my job first as an educator and secondary as a consultant. So my job is always to educate the clients, to understand where they're trying to go, understand the path they want to go, understand what the stakeholders all need, and be able to create a strategy that brings everybody into it and be able to deliver an end product that everybody is comfortable with.
Talk to me a little bit more about those case studies, because this is something that I know a lot of consulting firm owners and B2B coaching firm owners struggle with. They do get crazy good results, but the problem is either how do you get that case study out of the clients? How do you get them to talk about their experience with you? Where were they before they started? Where are they now? Um, and in a day and age where anybody can claim anything on the internet,
Mhm.
right? You want to put as much proof as possible in it. But when you're forced to anonymize, make sure that um, numbers are not mentioned whatsoever, it can hurt a bit the efficiency of the case study, let's say. So, how do you come up with them? How do you get the client to sit down with you and be like, hey, yes, this is what I feel comfortable sharing and whatnot? Like, how do we make this part of your marketing funnel, basically?
So that's generally speaking, that's a secondary or tertiary part when they're feeling comfortable with you and they're looking for closing. They're looking for validation before closing. So when you're looking from a funnel perspective, it's not the beginning of the funnel, it's somewhere in the middle of the funnel that that conversation ends up happening. The proof of past performance, it is based on, that's something the marketing department or the venture capitalists, they take it to stakeholders and say, read this. And then, so what ends up happening is the validity of it comes when they come to me with very, very specific questions. They say, so you did this, how did you solve for X, Y, and Z? So I give them, I anonymize the facts behind it to a certain degree. And I also tell them, listen, obviously the same way you don't want me to share your information, your private information, I will not be able to share their private information. So I will share whatever I am allowed to and I can. And then so from there, I'll take them through the entire process. And I said, and then the question I ask them is, how is this the same or different for your organization? And then it is, again, it's the educational factor of this is how I would change it. So it is not designed to be a hard push. It is a soft product that is designed to steer the conversation and show my skills and showcase what my capabilities are. And obviously, that one case study is the probability of that one case study identically fitting their mold is very, very low because organizations are different, sizes are different, needs are different, shareholders and stakeholders are different. So it becomes how do we go ahead and customize this around you? And that is where, in a sense, my magic actually happens.
Amen to that. Talk to me about what happens next. So you get someone through events, conferences, right? You have conversations there.
Mhm.
You talk to your neighbor in the plane, and you end up doing business with them. But what happens between the moment that you have that hook, that foot in the door, to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement? What does sales motion look like for you, Babak?
For me, it's understanding the scope of the project, and then also understanding what the different variables of the scope can be. One of the things I like to do is to make it as riskless for them as possible, meaning that I don't go ahead. I know a lot of consultants want to go ahead and just throw a big package at them in the beginning, but what I found that is that actually deters people a lot, especially if they've not worked for you. So what I do is I do as a phasing process. I do a multi-layer phasing process and allow them to get out of it in anytime they want to, right? I understand that they want to go from A through Z. Obviously, if they stop somewhere in G and H, they're not going to get to that roadmap. But if they want to get through it, they need to go through the entire process. But it gives them an ability to be committed enough that they see the results that they're yearning for and they get comfortable with you and they see you as a really really critical aspect and partner in their growth rather than a person who's extracting money every month out of their out of their income statement. So that is my role is understand. And then also some of these organizations, although they're growing, although they have a multi-million dollar accounts and bank balances, they're also in scale mode, which means that they may be running dry sometimes. So it's understanding also how to charge them, which is also an important part of this. How do you charge them? Is it going to be a one lump sum, monthly sums? How is this charging going to happen? It's understanding that. So it is really setting myself up as a partner in this process rather than just an outside consultant.
But how do you do that then? Because so I think and we talk about it a lot on this podcast, but like
Mhm.
starting with the foot in the door, a very low risk engagement, because I mean that's the famous nobody gets fired to hire for hiring IBM, right, or Deloitte
Right.
or PwC or McKinsey. But when we are a smaller boutique consulting firm, it's also about proving ourselves, building the
Mm.
authority and trust as we go, and starting with that foot in the door, making it, if not risk free, at least like highly decreased risk. Um, so how do you do that? And I really like your part around figuring out the right. It's not even payment plan, but it's like package. How do we approach this? How do you do this? Can you tell us a
So
bit more?
yeah, sure. So one of the key things that I ended up happening is asking the right questions during the conversation. So during this, when we're engaging in a conversation, it's not a one-way conversation of just proving myself. It's also me understanding what their initial goals are, what their capacity is, how much resources do they have internally, how much resources are they lacking and require externally. What experience does the marketing team or the scale team or the growth team have in international markets? Do they have points of contact in international markets, as an example? All of those are part of the discovery phase for myself as well. And once I'm developing that discovery phase, once I am developing that, my understanding is okay. So how can we go ahead and showcase early deliverables to showcase our understanding, number one. Number two, our ability to deliver something fairly early to show where the process should go. If they're having issues, if they already have or are international markets and they're having issues, how can we go ahead and showcase that we can actually fix it and find where the issues are for them to actually shift? And that happened to us in a project that we're working with a pretty big company out of Mississippi, and they were spending a lot of money in social media marketing, B2B marketing, and other variables to go ahead in Australia. And I said, okay, showcase to me the spending that you're doing. And we found that very, very early on that they were spending their largest amount of money in the wintertime in the US, which converted into summer break in Australia, which meant that everybody was on vacation, right? So even the seasonalities, they didn't understand that. So that was something very, very simple that we can strategize fairly early on. A very, very easy way of saving the money and then showing results fairly early on. And this is the thing we're talking about, is that level of localization may be missing from a lot of people. They think the world works, and especially in America, they think the world works very, very similar to America everywhere that you go. And so, and this is what I'm talking about, the first phase is education. The first phase is understanding, is peeling that onion, understanding the failures that have been implemented and are not scalable, and they're not seeing the results. And my first easy targets are those, is how can we go ahead and fix those problems early on? How can we address those problems early on? If there is an international marketing strategy, how can we create a preliminary marketing strategy, internationalization strategy, and seeing where the failures are, where my biases may be in that conversation, and then being able to adjust those fairly early on. So this is what I'm talking about in showing early deliverables, is that also interviewing. I spend so much time interviewing people. In some engagements, I spend 1 to 2 weeks, just 40 hours each week, if not more, and then after hours in interviewing. And the reason is because my job is to listen and to learn early on. And so as you spend more time with people and they're telling you what they have been doing, you learn so much more from the organization. You become a dictionary, in a sense, an entire encyclopedia of all their failures in internationalization. And then you figure that out. For example, some SaaS companies, they had been building the entire system based on the American model of numerification of dollars and of currency, right? So it's a simple thing as a comma and a dot. Where does the comma go? Where does the dot go, right? If your entire SaaS system is designed on that, then scaling becomes an issue. So you got to completely change it around and adapt it around.
One of the things I want to, so first of all, this is gold. So thank you so much, Babak. One of the things that I want to double down on is attribution, because you talked about this for your clients, but I think for consultants, this is so much relevant as well, especially when they have multiple, or they start to have multiple marketing endeavors and channels. You want to have proper attribution, and especially if you're multi-country, the exam that you highlighted is absolutely perfect for that. Cultures, time zones, timelines differs depending on where you're doing business. Talk to me about retention. I think we've kind of already alluded to that because of the strategy of like risk-free, foot in the door, adapting as we go. But the money in consulting is also in retention, right? How do we keep on providing value to the clients, and so that we can keep on billing them, to say the terms? How do you go about that? Like, do you have specific mechanism, or like how do you optimize for retention and to keeping your clients?
So I am, and I'm not. I don't believe in that principle. I'm so sorry to say.
That's
I
good. I
can be
love a good
honest.
challenge.
Yeah, I'm. So one of the problems I have always seen with consultants, I'm based in the Washington D.C. metro area, and one of the problems I've always seen with consulting firms, especially for government consulting firms, is that they become almost like the symptom that lets the problem continue as a consultant. It's financially viable, right? As long as you fix the symptoms, but the problems are still there, you can financially still monetize, right? So it's a very comfortable place to be. It's a very, very great way to make sure that your cash flows are there. So I have a different principle, and then that principle is that if I'm there for more than 18 months, I'm doing something very, very wrong. right? So my engagement and my end needs to be 18 months for that specific project. Now, many times what ends up happening is the internationalization project of one area becomes successful, and then we shift to another market, right? So that is that's different, right? So that's what I specialize in. It's that. And then
So
also becomes, for example, it's not always greenfielding, right? It's also acquisitions. So maybe it's an acquisition analysis of foreign markets. It doesn't have to always be the same thing.
I love this because that's kind of where I was hoping us to go. So I believe I've been in the field myself, although I was like junior and then senior consultant, not the managing partner. But I think the role of a consultant is eventually to fire themselves.
100%.
Otherwise, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Although the mechanism that I've observed at PwC when I was there is indeed like you do one project, you solve one problem, you potentially even help with the implementation, right? Which is
Right.
another project in and of itself. Different capabilities, but like that's possible for bigger firms. But then solving a problem also means that you're triggering new problems. Like, hey, you've reached that step, but then here is what's next. And that could also be maybe not recurring business, but reoccurring business. And being like,
Right.
we solve this, this is now the problem. I can also help you solve that. How do you do this? Different business units, right? We did an internationalization in, I don't know, France, and now we are looking at Italy. We still need some help. Let's look into this. But I agree with you. It's like identifying the next problem, potentially providing value there, but eventually on the project that you're hired for in the first place, firing yourself because that's the whole point.
Agreed. I think that the success is measured in my business by firing myself, not by staying on.
That's a hard race because then it's like, how do I get myself fired as much as possible? But then how do you make a sustainable business for that? But I get you. Um, I vibe with the way you do business, Babak. But I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball question at you though.
Please.
What's um, what's your number one challenge right now? What's the one nut that you're trying to crack that you know once you crack, you're gonna take the whole business to the next level? What would that be for you?
So, to be honest with you, that's not my problem that I have because I've created this organization as a lifestyle brand for myself. Early on in my life, I realized I do not want to be the next PwC. That's not where my quality of life is, right? My quality of life is not about having 200, 300, 400 employees and waking up and throwing the next project in there and figuring out, I got 10 consultants who are not working. We need more projects, everything like that. So for me, the problem is not, thank goodness, for me, the problem is not getting good clients. My problems are not scaling. My problems today are economical issues surrounding global finance. My problems are policy issues that are completely changing how we do business. So tariffs have always been, just think about this issue of global tariffs and how things are working. Wars and this bifurcation of the global economy that we're slowly going under. Those are the next phases of where the challenges are, and also where my clients can do business, right? What I would say is that they're not so much internal problems, but it's the external problems that are manifesting themselves. And then it's also having those answers because that's where my clients are coming with questions right now. They're saying to me, we got, we have our supply chain in about 200, 100 and some odd countries, 200, 300, or 400 different manufacturers in 50, 60, 80 countries. How do we go ahead and define and how do we streamline that? What do we move to certain friendly, what do we friendshore? So those are the conversations that are happening. And obviously, when you have such massive changes so quickly, and you still don't have policy which is really, really well defined and stable, those are the challenges that I am facing right now. And it's less of the challenges of, getting 50 more clients and scaling up to $1 billion.
Um, so I like this a lot. And challenge could absolutely be external challenges.
Mhm.
So let me dig a little bit further into this because, I mean, obviously, what you said, Babak, I think is what 90% of the consultants are struggling with right now as well. The remaining 10% being the ones that aren't aware that this is a problem, but it's going to
Right.
be. So, how are you thinking about maybe not solving this because I don't think one has the power to change wars going on or tariffs going on.
Mhm.
Um, but one can have a more flexible, adaptable, resilient business, right? So, not to put you on the spot, but more being like, we will have consultants right now thinking about this problem as well. It's always valuable to hear how your peers are thinking about solving the problem that you're facing yourself. So, how are you approaching this? How are you thinking about, okay, there is all that going on. How do I keep my good lifestyle business and keep on growing steadily and getting clients and providing value to those clients? How are you thinking about that?
So number one is educating myself with every single thing that's going on from a policy perspective. It's the more information I have, the more both direct and indirect information I have of what's going on the ground. Also, what resources are available globally. If there needs to be for example, if a project is, we need to analyze the supply shift for our organization and tell us which countries are good for us to move production and what would be cheaper. That's an engagement that we can be involved in, but it requires a lot of analysis. It requires a lot of understanding, a lot of financial modeling. It also requiring timeline requirements in terms of the supply chain structuring, right? So, are there raw resources that are required? Can we get raw resources into the region? At what scale can we get them in, right? So all of those are nuanced questions that end up being having to answer, and the only way you can answer them is by really digging in and really getting your hands dirty and getting as much as information as possible. And then you also have to do analysis on other prospects of what if? What if this changes? What if this is triggered? What if this place goes away? What are the other possibilities? And give me three other areas. Now, a lot of people say the AI is the question, AI is the answer. I have not seen AI yet in this area do as well as it could, but I'm absolutely sure it can do miracles with if then questions once it's programmed correctly and the systematic systems are there to be able to do that. So, but in the short term, you need to have the raw data to be able to mold this and then to find areas that are viable for clients and they make sense for clients.
To continue on that educational piece, do you think educating your clients as well around those stakes is important, or how do you see this?
Yes and no. Some clients don't have the time or the I want to say this diplomatically, or the width, the bandwidth to understand it. I mean,
Yeah,
not because they don't want to, it's just because it's not part of their. They haven't grown up with it. It's not part of who they are.
it's
Exactly.
20th on the list of priorities.
Exactly. And spending 2, 3 hours understanding it becomes much more convoluted and actually creates more problems for them because they could think they understand it in a certain way, but then they misapply the findings, right? So the issue becomes you give them the information they need, you give them the information, the education that it's necessary for them to understand the reasoning behind it, and then you also answer why you didn't do the other 2 or 3 things and why that wasn't done. And I think that that creates a very clean and complete and time frame that they're comfortable with.
Babak Hafezi, ladies and gentlemen. Babak, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
So obviously, my website is always the best,
Mhm.
www.hafezicapital.com.
Hafezi.
And yeah, HAFEZICAPITAL.com. And then obviously they can also find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Instagram. They can find me on all on X. I'm not very active on X, but it's available up there. um, I'm more active on LinkedIn, and obviously you can always go on the website, and my phone number is also there, and you're more than welcome to call me.
What I'm most surprised by is Instagram. It's not common for consultants, so I like that. We'll put all the links in the description. For what I'm concerned, I can say one thing for sure, Babak, is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I just added you. Thank you so much
I
for
appreciate
coming
that.
on
Thank you.
Consulting Leaders.
It's been an honor, and thank you for your time. And I want to formally welcome you to the United States. And I hope that you enjoy
Thank you.
it and that you see a different perspective of the world. And then, and hopefully, you'll take some back home, and then you'll be two different people at the same time.
Let's maybe do an encore episodes in 2 years from now and debrief that.
I look forward
Thank
to
you
that.
so much, Babak.
Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.